Writing in the social sciences. A social science is a branch of science that deals with the institutions and functioning of human society and with the interpersonal relationships of individuals as members of society. Some of its subjects are anthropology, archaeology, economics, geography, history, law, linguistics, politics, and sociology. These are also shared with the humanistic field, but it depends on the focus that they are given. A little timeline of the writing in the social sciences includes the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen by Emmanuel Joseph Sieyès and the Marquis of Lafayette, written in 1789 about politics. The Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, written in 1848 about political philosophy. Anarchism and Other Essays by Emma Goldman, written in 1910 about political philosophy as well, and Open Veins of Latin America by Eduardo Galeano, written in 1971 about history.
The text we chose was the Declaration of the Rights of Women and of the Female Citizens by Olympe de Gouges. How was life before the text we chose? First of all, the gender roles in the English life between the 1700s and the 1800s were clearly defined views of the purpose of each gender in social life and marital life. They based on the idea that genders had different characteristics that enclosed them into the doing of only certain things. The ideas of innovation, such as women's rights, were at the time a matter of taboo, and many were skeptical about if it was needed. The views of the gender roles had two origins at the time. The Christianity point of view, the idea of the family and the idea of men ruling over women, and the biological point of view, which was just introduced by the scientific revolution. The roles that the biological approach stated is that gender have certain roles. Women have babies, and they need to nurture them. But there is no evidence of how they got to women having to be at home always besides the Christian approach. On the other hand, the scientific approach also stated that men were more strong and tall, so they should do all of the hard work and decisions. And as any other animal, genders were classified. Women were thought to be just a companion for men, a trophy, or a reproductive machine, or a social requisite. During this time, the idea of the role of women was more clearly standardized for almost the whole globe, comparing to the different views that exist of women nowadays. Europe started as a sexist continent because of their religion, and then took the biological approach also into consideration, passing this belief, of course by force, we all know the story of colonization, to the Americas, which meant that for many, many years women were another object, for men to be okay with themselves. We can also question ourselves, why did so many people truly believe in these justifications? Because the majority didn't have their own criteria? Didn't have the knowledge? Because women didn't believe in themselves? No, because of the selfishness of humans, of thinking they are on top of the world, taking privilege by force.
Women played an important role throughout the French Revolution. There were two groups of women. The Salonières, who were aristocratic and bourgeois women, and because of their free time and economical stability, were able to reunite and discuss and write works. Then, the sans-culottes were working-class women, and they mainly participated in street manifestations. Their needs and desires were different. For example, the Salonières wanted political rights, while the sans-culottes wanted accessible prices to food. They were finally excluded from public and political life, because even the most radical revolutionaries thought that women shouldn't be allowed in these places. Olympe de Gouges was born in 1748. She was a bourgeois woman, which is why we are able to see paintings of her. She was a writer, playwright, and political activist. She took on this path when her husband died and she moved with her child. She defended the French Revolution, women's rights, and the abolition of slavery. She was sent to the guillotine by Robespierre in 1793. She was one of 3 women executed throughout the French Revolution and was the only one executed because of her political writings. Her most recognized writing is the Declaration of the Rights of Women and of the Female Citizen. It starts with the following quote: Man, are you capable of being fair? A woman is asking. At least you will allow her that right. Tell me, what gave you the sovereign right to oppress my sex? It was published in September 15 of 1791, and it is a copy of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, but including women. It was dedicated to the Queen Mary Antoinette, because even though she was the most hated woman at the time, she was a woman, and Olympe de Gouges was asking her to take her place as one. This is one of the reasons why she was sent to the guillotine. And it is also considered a parody of the original document, which is why it was forgotten for so many years. This text was the start of feminism. The first wave goes from the 18th century to the 19th century, and after Olympe de Gouges' text, Mary Wollstonecraft published A Vindication of the Rights of Woman in 1792. Then the complaint notebooks were created. These notebooks were filled with complaints from all types of women, and they were sent to the National Assembly. What they wanted could be summarized in the desire for rights to education and to work, rights regarding marriage and children, and the right to vote. They also wanted to abolish prostitution. The second wave goes from the 19th century to the 20th century. It started with women participating in the fight to abolish slavery, and then they realized that they were also oppressed, which is why the suffragettes started fighting for their rights. Their first text was the Declaration of Sentiments, written in Seneca Falls in 1848. This text basically stated what was wrong and what they wanted. After this, the Women's Social and Political Union was created, which was only for women because they realized that men were unable to help their cause. During this wave, the suffragettes appropriated for themselves the term feminist, which was used as an insult. And as an act of protest, they started calling themselves feminists. After World War II, most developed and decolonized countries had feminine suffrage, which is why feminism started to decline. Then Simone de Beauvoir published The Second Sex, which got feminism the attention it had lost. This text states that there is no biological evidence for gender roles to exist, and its most famous quote is, "One is not born, but rather becomes a woman."
Black Friday, 1910. Called like this after 300 women attempted to enter the parliament to protest for voting rights and to protest for the murder of women by their husband. After the ensuing riot, Churchill and the government tried to cover up the police brutality of the riot, but did not succeed and the damage was done. The brutality of how the peaceful riot was managed was the top of the iceberg to the suffragettes. Women then entered the political and social world as they had never seen before, with the Women's and Social Political Union led by the enigmatic Pankhurst family that consisted of a mother and her daughters. If men use explosives and bombs for their own purpose, they call it a war, wrote Crucible Pankhurst in 1913. And the throwing of a bomb that destroys other people is then described as a glorious and heroic deed. Why should a woman not make use of the same weapons as men? It is not only war we have declared, we are fighting for a revolution. Women started coming, rioting, destroying public buildings and churches. Some of the women that were protesting thought the way for getting their rights recognized was violence, a call for the guns. If the government must have damage as a token that women want the vote, damage they shall have. Kitty Marin. 240 people had been sent to prison for militant suffragette activities. Once in prison, these inmates were often subjected to the torture of force feeding at the hands of the prison authorities, actions which only further radicalized them and increased their commitment to the militant campaign on their release. Suffragette iconoclasm in museums, 1914. 5 Venetian paintings in the National Gallery had been attacked by a suffragette on May 22, 1913, while in a simultaneous but separate incident, another suffragette had damaged George Clausen's Primavera at the Royal Academy, today known as art vandalism, but not doing justice to the meaning of a movement such as this one, and might be also considered ignorant. In March 10, 1914, the toilet of Venice by Diego Velázquez was assaulted, and inspired a wave of further assaults that lasted 5 months. Until the First World War, where suffragist activities stopped. The police and the government remember this as a sanitation of our history from suffragettes, remembering only their defiant bravery and rousing call to arms. But when some women were taking direct action of violence, something we might struggle with now, the suffragettes that didn't believe in militant violence were fighting for the political power. Many thousands protested peacefully, some led by Josephine Butler and Millicent Fawcett, that left a legacy of female activism to raise money in order to fight for women's rights. The small amount of knowledge we have about these two types of protesters during this time only shows how feminism is as fractured and complex as it is today. In 1918, women were granted the vote only if they were older than 30 and had properties over €5. After the First World War in the United Kingdom, women that were left while men fought and died in the war ensured Britain's survival to the horrors of war, maintaining the social and economic structures. They did this either by being in hospitals, being journalists, or photographers. Women finally were granted the vote after this war.
The third wave of feminism took place in the second half of the 20th century. Its slogan was "Personal is Political" by Kate Millett, and its main purpose was to bring awareness to things that don't happen in the public eye, such as domestic violence and rape. They also fought for reproductive rights, such as access to contraceptive methods and abortion. The focus of this third wave switched from equality to the liberation of women, and it started to be more intersectional, meaning that more women were allowed in feminism, not only white, cisgender, straight, and bourgeois women. Finally, the fourth wave, which is happening right now, is still a fight for women's rights. And now it is divided into many branches to suit the needs of women around the world. The most known ones are radical and liberal feminism, but there are many other branches here and around the world.
And finally, for ending the presentation, a feminist is anyone who recognizes the equality and full humanity of women and men. Gloria Steinem. Thank you for listening.